So you want to run a long campaign, not a one-shot, not a mini arc. I'm talking a proper multi-year, sprawling, character-driven campaign where we start at level 1 and we end up Legends of the Realm by the time that we're done. But here's the thing. You don't want to end up being level 11 by the end of the second arc. And I get it. Neither do I. High level play is awesome, but it's not something you want to rush, and it's not something you want to stay in all the time. And if you've ever run a campaign that level too quickly, you know exactly what I mean. That spell list starts getting overwhelming, every encounter becoming a boss battle, and those quiet moments of growth, they begin to disappear. I used to think level ups were the only way to show growth. Big battle, level up. Finished an arc, level up again. Solved a mystery, well, that's a level up. But here's what I learned: when everything is rewarded with a level, your pacing, it goes straight out the window. When players jump levels too fast, you rob them of the space they need to learn and grow into their characters. Milestones start stacking up like achievements in a video game, instead of being what they're meant to be. Moments that shape the world and the people within it, and the characters and their story. So what's the solution? It's what I guess you could call alternative advancement. And no, that's not a homebrew rule buried in a forgettable PDF. It's a mindset shift. It's understanding that levels are not the only way to show progress and growth within a character. You want to pace your game better, give your players ways to grow that don't touch the XP bar. Let them evolve through the story, through meaningful choices, through gifts and gains, and through feats of strength or skill. Give them ways of advancement that say, through the choices you've made, you're growing and changing. And it's not just with a new hit die. It's part of the reason my players are happily only level 4 at almost 30 sessions into our current campaign. Especially when a lot of their history prior to this comes from the fast-paced leveling of module-based campaigns. So let's talk tools. Real, usable, plug-and-play stuff that you can give your players that make them feel more powerful, more special, more evolved, without touching that level up button. Feats are a no-brainer. Offering a feat as a reward for completing a major personal goal, or surviving a traumatic encounter or experience or magical event is a great way to say, you've changed. It doesn't have to be mechanical either. You can tie your feats into the story. Let me give you an example from my own table. One of my players since session 1 has been all about foraging, cooking, and making sure the party is fed. Not just because they're trying to optimize anything at all, just because that's who their character is. And it's become this quiet but comforting rhythm throughout the campaign. After a long march or a close call, they're already prepping a stew or roasting something over a fire, sharing food like it's the one thing that they can control in this space. So eventually we reach this town that's preparing for an influx of soldiers and refugees and laborers. Tensions are high. Everyone's scrambling and trying to figure out what they need to do to prepare, and the local innkeeper, who's seen this player constantly feeding and preparing food for their friends day after day, pulls them aside and asks for their help in the kitchens. What followed was a whole moment, a real story beat, a challenge that went all the way from assisting with basic prep to, by the end, running the entire kitchen. The innkeeper set out to handle smoking meats outside, and suddenly, my players at the helm of the kitchen, calling orders, managing a dozen volunteers, and improvising with limited ingredients. And you know what? They crushed it! And it was at this point that they were awarded with the chef feat. Something that I had been thinking about giving them for quite some time, just due to their thorough roleplay of fulfilling that role within the party, But it all too naturally fell into place when I began to look around for places to put it, and they ended up in the right scenario naturally. And the best part? It had nothing to do with the main plot. No big villain, no magical MacGuffin, but it mattered to them. It mattered to the party, the whole table. Because it was growth, it was earned, and it was the story of the character playing out at the table. And now it continues to matter to the entire party even more than it did before. Because not only is it part of their own ritual of peace that they have, but now it also does provide them with bonuses. So even more so now, the characters are always looking forward to figuring out what said player is going to be cooking that evening or that morning, and they're ready to get that little bit of boost of temporary hit points along with the foodie of a player's description of what they're eating. Moments like that is how you pace a long campaign. That's what fills the space in between the levels and the big events and the boss battles and all of that. It's what helps make it feel real. Let a fighter learn thieves' tools after spending time with the rogue. Let your wizard learn how to use a longsword after they've trained with the local guard. These are the kind of slow, story-based proficiencies and things that make players feel like the game is responding to their choices, and not that they are gated by certain milestones or story beats to be able to unlock advancement for their character. The player who is always preparing and foraging for food has recently caught the attention of the bard in our party, who is very much more of a city-goer type character, but has begun to take more interest in things like nature, the outdoors, and foraging, and has been assisting and aiding in a lot of these little treks to go find resources. And now I'm left to wonder, if this continues, how might I weave in a way to hand out a survival or a nature proficiency, both the two skills that I use for the foraging system within my game. This not only gives me things to think about when you hit that point that you always do in prep, where you're like, okay, we have kind of a blank spot in the story, but I don't want to handwave this session. I don't want them to get right to the next big thing. I need stuff in between. Put in challenges, put in things for them to overcome that are more based off of purely what kind of character they're trying to play, or the kinds of ways that you can see that they are trying to change their character, and let that come alive. In a quick break, let's talk real quick about today's sponsor. Today's video and our future of better sounding audio is brought to you by Movo. Now, I was super excited when Movo reached out to us and wanted to offer us a wireless microphone setup for the channel, and I gotta tell you, I couldn't be happier. It's a huge upgrade. I have a lot more freedom of what I'm able to do within shooting, and we really do just sound better. It even works from like really far away. So while not the most traditional sponsor of any D&D channel, I know it's a little bit different, but hey, I had to give these guys a shout out. They helped us out with some audio equipment. If you guys have any audio recording or listening needs, check Movo out today. Their link can be found in the description below. They strive to bring you quality audio products at an unbeatable price. And with that, let's get back to the video. That was getting too bright, so hopefully I can edit that in post and it's better. Anyways, magic items are another great tool. They shouldn't just be stat sticks that you throw up at the players to keep up with monsters. They're story artifacts. They should feel like part of the character and part of their journey. Not every item per se, but at least one. If you've never handed a player an item that grows with them, you're missing one of the best ways to slow down some of that level progression without slowing down character development. Giving them milestones, mystery, and meaning, using things like sentient items tied to characters or their lineage, or campaign backstory stuff, are all other great ways to extend our items' interest and usefulness and story impact. You're not just rewarding them with power, you're anchoring that power to the emotional spine of the campaign and the story that the characters are trying to tell. The sword hits harder because they've earned it. The shield shines brighter because they made it better. And don't ever count things out like more simple magic items too. If you want a little bit more on how those can be impactful in your games, check out this video linked above and in the description below on simple magic items and their impact. Don't forget things like marks, tattoos, a cursed eye that gives special knowledge, a tattoo that glows when certain things are near. These aren't spells or features, they're flavor-packed progression tools that say you're not who you were before, or at the very least they change how the world sees the character and how they see the world. And when you take the time to tie these kinds of things back into the story, whether it be that character serves as a compass to something important, or the knowledge or power that they have being something that is to be harnessed and is integral to the bad guy's means. There are so many ways to begin to open up for emergent storytelling, especially when you don't decide all of this right off the bat and you give yourself time to let it develop. And one of the most underused tools for long campaigns has to be mentors. Characters in the world who help your players grow. Not just stronger, but deeper. Think about Avatar: The Last Airbender. Every member of the main cast learns from someone. Aang has multiple bending teachers. Zuko's entire arc is shaped by Uncle Iroh. Even Toph becomes a mentor herself, and Sokka sees many as well. Growth happens through connection, and that's just as true in D&D as it is anywhere else. Let your fighter train under the grizzled swordmaster. Let the bard learn an old lullaby from a forgotten culture, only left to be known by the single hermit who resides. Let your world itself invest into the characters' paths. And here's the part that really makes this fun. You might already know your player's character is headed down a slightly different path. Maybe they're drifting from their class's usual specialties. Maybe you see seeds of something else taking root. A rogue showing fascination with divine magic, or a barbarian who starts solving their problems with words. This might even lead to multi-classing later, or even just a complete shift in how they interact with the world. But if you have that knowledge early on and ahead of time, even just a whisper of where they might want to go, you can start planting these moments into the story that gently guide them towards the path they're trying to take. Whether the character knows it or not, the player sure does. And when that growth finally happens, not because of a big mechanical choice, but because it emerged from who that character has become, it just hits different. And I genuinely can't think of many things that are more fulfilling as a storyteller than watching and helping that unfold. Alright, so now you're stocked with options, but how do you use them? Simple. Set expectations. Talk to your players about what advancement opportunities and what advancement means in your game. Make sure they know you'll be pacing things deliberately and that you've got ways to reward their growth between the levels. Tell them that as you see their characters lean into certain parts of roleplay or really engage with certain aspects of the game or show a character's desire for growth outside of their class or typical specialties, that you will be watching for these things, and that you will be looking for how their characters can advance outside of leveling. The best way to get this out of your players for free is to explain to them that their efforts will be rewarded. At the end of the day, we're all giving up our time to do this, and people like to walk away with some sense of accomplishment. Maybe not every session, but when it hits, it feels all worth it. This all sets the tone. Your players won't be asking, when do we level up again? Will it be this session? Well, I mean, they probably still will, because mine definitely do, but at least it's a little bit less. If they know their story is going to be progressing, even without a number ticking up, they have a little bit they can rest on. And don't forget, be intentional. Don't throw feats around like candy. tie everything back into character choices and their stories and their journey. When you reward progression with meaning, not just mechanics, you build investment. When you slow down and make room for things to matter, for bonds to form, for challenges to sting, for victories to mean something, leveling up is great, but it's not the only way to grow. And if you're trying to stretch your campaign into something really long and long-standing, meaningful, unforgettable, then advancement outside of leveling is probably the best pacing tool in your toolkit. Don't be afraid to let your players grow sideways, not just upwards. Sometimes the most powerful stories aren't told at level 20. They're built in the space of between levels 3 and 6. And well, that just about wraps up today's video, but before we go, I gotta know, what do you think? Do you use progression outside of leveling to aid in pacing in your games? Or have I inspired you to maybe try it a little? Let me know down in the comments below and share any of your tips and tricks that you have that you like to use to control pacing within your games. And let's keep this conversation going. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and smack that subscribe button as it helps the channel out a ton. And if you'd like to further support me and the channel and have access to exclusive perks and more down the road, we now have channel memberships available on the site. With that said, thanks guys, and I'll see you on the next one.